that excites things, and it brings in many new interesting outlooks, but it doesn't necessarily solidify them or make the person become more stable or more secure in old age. At least I was part of that group. I was there. You know, so a lot of old guys today, or old girls do, like the old hippie generation was a cultural thing to North America, really. And everybody thought it was so changed. We tuned in, turned in, dropped out, and we had this understanding, this has got to be right. You know, and the kids born at that time would have Uranus square Jupiter. The time was producing this unconventional understanding to fight the system. But it was incredibly exciting. Most people are so glad they went to San Francisco or were part of it in some way or another. And electronic music was coming in, everything was changing. Wow, what a rush. What was stable? You know what? It went by so fast in a little area. The people that were there are still talking about, but the next generation come along and they're involved in heavier drugs, other things. There was much more instability around that understanding. So even though it was an excitable understanding to break away from things, it wasn't stable. You know, it was something for a relatively short period of time. Of course, there's certainly a number of thousands of kids born in that relatively, or maybe millions of kids born in that relatively short period of time that will have that energy. What am I going to do with my life if my parents are hippies? Well, most of the kids of hippies aren't hippies. They're embarrassed about their parents. It changed. So Uranus, Jupiter is a puzzle. What's your guiding light? What's guiding you? How are you judging what you're doing? Uranus is judging it excitingly. It's radical. I'm not saying that the system was too sucked, that wasn't working. I had to break away from that. I had to do that. And that justification is there. That justification is then going to try and persuade all the other planets in the chart to go along with that. And the planets that it's squaring or opposing that you are sitting is going to be the ones most affected most difficultly. There'll be stress there. Hard to measure it. It will show out, and if you're with someone, you're trying to go for something. Say you marry someone, you put your resources together, you have a certain set of money in the bank you're going to go off of. The odds of a Jupiter Uranus not using it and waiting to be patient for it to play out, that's risky. But one person might want to say, we've got to preserve it, we've got to protect the investment. The other person will say, here's a good chance that it's excitable. It wants to go for that speculation. So there's a tendency to go for the excitement regardless of the cost. Wow. When you try and take someone's guiding like that, you imagine driving your car or teaching your kid. We really should know the birth dates of the teachers of our kids to see what they're putting out. It'll never happen unless you luckily ask them or find out. Now, the teachers, on the other hand, can get the charts of the kids. They may not know the time, but they know where the planets are. So you notice that it's a different texture. I can try and pull out examples, but say how an unconventional understanding. So many people have it. I'm so glad I have an unconventional understanding. I'm getting out of this, I'm getting out of that. And they will then guide all their energy and all their other planets to go that way. But in a certain way, Saturn at that point is trying to put on the brakes, but you're splitting yourself and you don't realize it. So if you're going to be unconventional, if you have a kid that wants to be unconventional, you want to be unconventional, and you want to be really good at it, and you want to stay there, go get an education so you're capable of doing that. So it's not just somebody else replacing you the next day. So right understandings about sex, about connections, about whatever, Jupiter, Mars, Jupiter, Venus. Jupiter exaggerates or increases. So if you have Uranus hitting your Mars and Jupiter hitting the Mars, you have the aggression is exaggerated and Uranus is destabilizing. So it's exaggerated aggression that's unstable. Whoa, that's really accident prone. Or impatient or explosive. So this is where these layers, as they start to fold into each other, the trick to interpreting a chart, you see, as astrologer, you see where the stress accumulates. So you know you have to really understand that one planet, but to understand that one planet clearly, you've got to understand Mercury, Moon, Mercury, Venus, put each level together, and then see, well, what is this doing to that? Then you get more specific information. So we're coming up to a place where we're going to start interpreting charts, and that makes, we'll start putting, we can get the multiple aspects happening and start seeing how these make the picture of which layers of consciousness are being affected by each other. But if it's in your chart, it's there all the time, when it's up, when it's down. And you have to figure out how to work with it or how to diminish the vulnerabilities of it or make the most of it. So, okay. When you get Uranus to Saturn, because Saturn's a crystallized defining force, Uranus is a disruptive force. So Saturn is trying to be defensive, disciplined, responsible, crystallized, fixed, defensive. Uranus is trying to break down the defenses. Oh, that's too cautious. Oh, that's crazy. Oh, no, look, just go for that. Just go. You know, like there could be a minefield out there and you're on one side of the fence, but you throw the ball. Saturn say, wait, go call someone. And Uranus said, no, just go ahead and reach it. What's the odds? You know? So Uranus to Saturn, it excites and weakens the ambition. It generally means there's an unstable father. A father may not have stayed there, or the parents split up. Same as Uranus to the Moon, but Uranus to Saturn, it's usually the father or the authority figure that's not there. It could be a stepdad or something else, or it could be there, but sometimes there's your sense of responsibility is shaken up. You might have had to change to a different father or change to no father. And you're going to school and other people's got their fathers and you don't, and what's happening. So it tends to make your defenses insecure and excitable. It tends to disrupt it and shock it. So if you're not properly prepared, it disrupts your ability to be prepared. So you tend to do things, but it weakens your ability to accomplish things and bring things to completion. You could work at something, you may not want to finish it. You know, and you work at things, you might want to take it too far and you don't know how to keep it within bounds of responsibility. So that unconventional disruption of father, of authority, could affect your hearing, could affect a disruption to bones or a weakness to, you know, like Uranus to Saturn could be involved in things like skin eczema or Crohn's. It just excites the defenses. It might weaken the bones. It's weakening your sense of responsibility. It's exciting it. I can't work at this. I can't get out of this. I gotta get out of this. I can't do this. Someone might have a straight job and be the secretary during the day and maybe kung fu fighting during the night, or kickboxing, or flying planes, doing something much more radical in the night. Taking tango lessons. I don't. Anyway, but Saturn is the conservative and Uranus is the unconservative, both being affected by each other. Really, Saturn is being affected by Uranus. So the excitement of Uranus is being delayed or threatening to the established status quo. So there could be an instability or insecurity about trying anything different, trying to do something new. We need to do something new. I don't know if I want to do it. I can't be good enough at that. Why should I bother if I'm not going to be good enough at that? So that usually you'll see Saturn to Uranus as something with the parents or something disrupting the family and taking away or making the authority figure unstable or not there. It can be the extended family. It can be the not parent being there. It could be the high-strung parent who doesn't really want to be the parent. Something's there to unstabilize that Saturn. So when it comes to ambition, they're inclined to do different things or odd things, not necessarily just hold the same job. You can't say it exactly because other planets are affecting other planets, a whole mix of things. Someone could have this nervousness, but they're afraid of taking another job because of some other planet. Other planets are tied into this. We're just taking one planet, one aspect at a time. the next level, we're going to be putting these all together, and I'm watching them more together, and we'll start to get a rational. See, in the rationale, the words are the lowest form of astrology. There's energies, colors, sounds, there's ways of tuning in far greater than words. But we're working with words, that's our language. We're trying to express these things as best as possible. So when you go to try to learn Mandarin or you try and learn Sanskrit, they'll say, well, these things can never be expressed properly in English, but you can try and tune in a bit. Same thing, these things can't totally be expressed in words unless you build up a foundation to somewhat perceive it. And we build up a certain foundation, lets us see in a certain way. And these are outer planets. They're not clear things. There's things that you're working in the chart and you say, oh, that's there. Or you notice it in the chart and you're wondering, and suddenly you ask some questions about dad or work. And suddenly this thing, what do you do? What do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? So there's an instability between accomplishing what you start out and maybe not being steady enough to finish it all. You still wouldn't accept it, but in the person's life, it will show up as the years go by. It could be something as simple as having to deal with, you got a kid and you married someone else, you have another kid, and maybe you've been through a couple of marriages and you got 2 or 3 kids from different people, and suddenly you have an unstable father figure for your kids. Well, then Jupiter is going to try and understand the Saturn, which is being destabilized by Uranus, and it might try and compensate or it might try and go with it, depending what the understanding is. And then it's going to guide the Mars and the Venus and the Sun and try and explain things and rationalize things to all of those, to everything else.